Are you in the mood for some Asian appetizers but don't really feel like spending the money, bites, points, or calories? Well, I have the perfect solution for you here. These are my Asian appetizers. I have scallion pancakes over here with a dipping sauce and my lumpia over here with a sweet and sour sauce. So if you'd like to see how these are made, stick around because it's coming up next. Hello and welcome to my kitchen. My name is Roy. I am a home cook and amateur baker, and I am here on this channel sharing recipes that have helped me to lose over 125 pounds, whether those recipes are mine or someone else's. Now today is not just one of mine, not just two of mine, but four of mine. 2 appetizers and 2 sauces to go with those appetizers. And for the appetizers, I'm doing 2 Asian appetizers, and I'm using some flatbreads. Specifically, I'm using Carb Flatbreads. Now, this is not sponsored by them. I'm not getting any money from them, but I did have some of these on hand and I wanted to use them. So I thought of different ways I could do that, and I came up with 2 appetizers. One is going to be for scallion pancakes. The other one is going to be lumpia, which are like Filipino spring rolls. But this is what I'm using, these low-carb flatbreads. You can use, obviously, any flatbread you want. You could probably use a low-point, low-bite tortilla. But this is what I'm using because of the shape and size. Now, I don't have all the other ingredients in here yet because I'm doing so many things I didn't want to get myself or you overwhelmed. So I'm going to shuffle a few things around, and we're going to start first on our sauces. Be right back. Okay, so we're going to start with the easiest of the 2 sauces, and that is for the scallion pancakes. It's just a soy sauce based sauce, and you can use it on anything you'd like. You can use it on rice, etc. Also, I'm going to have some difficulties today saying sauce and things like that because my jaw is acting up, as you can probably tell, but I am moving on and not letting it stop me. So in this big bowl, I have 2 tablespoons of soy sauce, a low sodium soy sauce, which is the one I prefer. 2 teaspoons of rice vinegar go in. 1 teaspoon of garlic, minced garlic, that's about 1 clove. 1.5 teaspoons of brown sugar replacement, and 1.5 teaspoons of scallions chopped. That's optional, you don't have to put that in, especially since you're gonna have the scallions in the pancakes. But it does add a nice little bump of flavor. And this was about probably 3 inches of the greens, so it doesn't have to be that precise. So we're just gonna mix this all together, and voila, that's all there is to it. So that's our first sauce. I'll be back in 1 second because I have my pan here. We need to cook the next one, and that's gonna be for our lumpia. Be right back. Okay, so for our lumpia sauce, which is basically a sweet and sour sauce, the first thing we're going to do, we have 2 teaspoons of cornstarch and 2 teaspoons of cold water. You always, whenever you mix cornstarch into anything, want to mix it into something cold, otherwise it's going to clump. So the first thing we're going to do is combine these 2 and make what is referred to as a slurry. I don't know why it's called a slurry, but that's what it's called. So we're just going to mix this together and then just set this aside. We don't need that just yet. The first thing we're going to do, I have 1 cup of water, and I have this pan over medium-high heat, and 1/4 cup of vinegar, white vinegar. You could use rice wine vinegar if you want. Now what we're gonna do is let this come up to a boil before we add in the other ingredients. Should just take a moment, so I will be right back. Okay, so the water is boiling and I'm getting a waft of vinegar going right up my nose. We're just gonna add in the other ingredients. 1/4 cup brown sugar replacement, 2 teaspoons of low sodium soy sauce, 1 teaspoon of minced garlic, 2 tablespoons sugar-free ketchup. I use the GUs. Stir this all together and get it to come back up to a boil. Then we're gonna reduce it to medium to allow it to simmer. It'll lose a little bit of the water and help to concentrate the flavors a little bit more. Okay, so it is boiling once again. It didn't take very long, maybe about 30 seconds for it to come back up. Going to turn this down. We're gonna let this cook for 5 minutes and I will be back. Okay, so it's been simmering for about 5 minutes. It's not gonna look like it's thinned very much, and it really hasn't. But you do want to, now that the 5 minutes have gone, stir this slurry back up because the cornstarch will try to settle on the bottom. So just mix that up and dump that in and then stir it. Now this is gonna do 2 things. Besides thickening, this is also gonna give it a nice glossy look to it. Okay, so that is stirred in. We're gonna give this about 5 minutes on medium. Allow that cornstarch to start to plump up and thicken our sauce, and I will be back. Okay, so it's been another 5 minutes. It's thickened up a little bit. You could reduce it a little bit more if you'd like, but it will also thicken up somewhat as it cools. So do be aware of that. So now I'm gonna pour it into my measuring cup just to see how much we get. We should get about a cup or so, a little over a cup, I believe. Yeah, a cup and 1/4. So this is gonna be about 16 servings of generous tablespoons worth. So now we're gonna set this aside to cool, and we're going to get started on our scallion pancakes. Okay, for the scallion pancakes, couldn't be easier. We're gonna use one of these flatbreads. We're gonna need one of these, 1 scallion, 1 egg white that I have beaten, and some spray butter. Couldn't be easier, but first, let me get this out of my way for a moment, because I need to chop up my scallion. And you want this fairly fine because you're going to spread it throughout these pancakes. So what I do is, well, I'm going to cut the end off first. Don't need that. Then I'm going to cut them in half, right down the middle. And then cut them in half again because you want them into little quarter-sized pieces. Not quarter size, little quarters. Quarter size would be way too big. And we're also going to dice this up a little bit. But just going to thinly slice these. Okay, now I've got them chopped up once. Now I'm going to go back and just roughly chop them a bit more. It doesn't have to be too fine of a chop. Just small pieces that can spread throughout your pancakes. Okay, that looks good. So let me clear the boards. That way I have room for my flatbread. Be right back. Okay, and I did put my scallions on a plate because I'm going to want to separate these into fourths so that they're easier to divvy up, and it's just easier for me to be able to visualize the 4 little piles. So that's why I put that on a plate rather than in a bowl. Now for the flatbread, you're going to fold it over in half along the long section. This side's a bit longer than this side. You're going to fold that side in half. And these are fairly thin. You could actually tear them. And then we need to cut each of these into 3. So I'm going to try folding them this way, getting them as close as possible, because you know, if I try to eyeball it, it's not going to work. And then for this one, I am going to cut because it seems to tear better in that direction than this direction. So, and I have heard people say like D over dish with a D, She didn't really enjoy the cut the carb flatbreads as much because they are very thin, and they are. But that actually works to my benefit here. So see, we're just folding it over into thirds, pressing down so I can know where to cut, and then cutting those. Now, scallion pancakes usually have a bit of texture to them. And if you know anything about me, you know I like having texture. So, just using 2 of these together would not do it. So I am going to be using 3 for each pancake. But each of those is going to make 4. So this is going to be a serving for 1 or 2. If either way, it's like if you wanted to eat them all yourself, you could do that without any guilt. If you wanted to share them with somebody, you have that option too. But you could also easily, if you were having a bunch of people over, you could easily make these ahead of time and double, triple, quadruple the recipe as you need. So I'm going to bring in my beaten egg white, and I'm going to brush 1 layer with the egg wash, the egg white here. Because what this is going to do is 2 things. It's going to let the scallions stick, and it's also going to adhere the next layer on top. So I'm going to take 1/4 of this, sprinkle this over as evenly as you can. You know, it doesn't have to be too precise. You will get that flavor throughout, especially since there are going to be 2 layers of scallions. Okay, and then I'll just move them around a little bit if there are too many in one section. All right, so that's done. We're going to take our next layer, press it firmly so that the egg white will hold them together. And they may want to separate a little bit, but just press them down. Now we're just going to repeat that same process. And you will have egg white left over from this, and what I usually do is just add it to my scrambled eggs the next time I make it. Or, as I said, if you're making more, you can easily use that up. And if you're using the pasteurized egg whites, that's probably even easier. Then we're going to scatter the rest of the scallions onto this piece. Now, if you follow me on social media or in my Facebook groups, which will be linked down below, then you probably saw when I shared these, and everyone was wanting the recipe. So I figured I'd better get this one out here pretty quickly. Okay, smooth that out and pick up any that I threw around that aren't getting in there. And then we're going to do the same thing, just top this layer with our last third of the flatbread. And now we're going to cut them into the distinctive triangles. We're going to cut them in half first, and then across the side, and hold on to the flatbread because it may want to try to shift because the egg white has not dried. It's not going to dry before we cook these. So just hold that in place while you're cutting. Okay, so there we have our 8 scallion pancakes. Now I'm going to spray these with a spritz of spray butter, each one, and then that's going to go into the frying pan with the butter side down. Let me get my skillet heated up over medium-high heat, and I'll be back. Okay, so my pan is heated up. I've sprayed them with butter. I'm just going to press down any spots that seem to be curling up or wanting to curl up. Now I'm going to take them and place them butter side down in the skillet. And I'm also going to take my spatula and press each one down just to help to seal it a little bit more, because that egg white is going to be cooking and holding that together. And they may stick to the spatula a little bit, and that's fine, just shift them around. Okay, so now I'm going to take some more spray butter, do a little spritz on each one again. And that way they'll be ready to flip in about 1 to 2 minutes once the side is browned. Okay, so it's been about 1 minute. Let me check. See, they're getting some nice color on there. That's exactly what you want. You don't want them to get too brown. So I'm just gonna give them another few seconds on this side and then start flipping them. Okay, so they are flipped. Just gonna press down again to help that other side seal in. And we're gonna give this 1 to 2 minutes and they're done. So all there is to it. So I'll be back in a second. Okay, yep, that looks good. So just gonna take these out, put them on a plate, and they are ready to serve. So you've got a tasty, quick little appetizer right there, and they are delicious. Honestly, they taste to me very similar to an actual scallion pancake. They are very satisfying. Having that third layer of the flatbread in there really gives them that chew that is very indicative of scallion pancakes. Let me turn off that skillet since I no longer need that. All right, so now these are done. One more appetizer to go. So let me gather my ingredients for the lumpia and we will get started. Okay, so for the lumpia, I have here 8 ounces of ground chicken, and I did grind it myself. I have a video that shows you how to grind your own meat. I'll card that here and include that in the description box below. But you only need 8 ounces. You could, because typically lumpia is made with pork, you could use some pork tenderloin and grind that up. I wanted to keep the bites and points even lower than pork, so I went with chicken, but pork is also an option. Now I have here 2 tablespoons of minced garlic. I have 1 scallion that I have chopped very finely, basically like I did for the scallion pancakes. I have here 4 teaspoons of soy sauce, basically 1 tablespoon and a teaspoon. 2 tablespoons of grated carrot. Now I use baby carrots because that's what I typically have on hand. And this took 4 baby carrots, good sized baby carrots, to make that amount. I have a half a teaspoon of black pepper, half a teaspoon of onion powder, and a half a teaspoon of garlic powder. So now I'm going to grab a larger bowl, just because I don't trust myself to stir very well in a smaller bowl, especially not with the way my body has been acting today. We're just going to combine all of the ingredients in here together. The garlic, scallion, soy sauce, grated carrot, black pepper, onion powder, garlic powder, and then we're just going to mix this all together to form a cohesive mixture. Now you don't want to work it too much because the meat can get tough, and you can use your hands unless you are Kim from A Girl in Her Phone. I know she won't touch meat with her bare hands, but there are gloves and I know she has some. Just roughly get this all together into one smooth mixture. That's ready. So let me bring in the flatbreads and we'll move on. Okay, so I have 3 of the flatbreads here. I'm just going to fold them in half. We're going to make 4 out of each flatbread. And because I have 3 layers here together, I am going to use the knife rather than try to fold it over and break it that way. Then I'm going to stack that up, fold this in half, and then do the same thing. Just cut that into half so that each flatbread became 4 little rectangles. Now, I have here a damp cloth because I'm going to store these on a plate as I work on them. And I don't want them to dry out while they're sitting there. So I'm going to cover them with a damp towel. All right, so now we're going to take, oh, I forgot my egg white. Okay, so I have 1 egg white here and I've added a tablespoon of water just to thin it out a little bit, make a little bit of an egg wash. Because we're going to need this to help us seal the deal here, kind of like we did with the scallion pancakes. So just whisk that up until it's pretty homogeneous. Then we are going to take a rough tablespoon, probably a little bit more than a tablespoon of our meat filling. You want to put it just in from the top. You want to have a little bit of a ledge here. And I'm going to brush all of these edges with our egg wash. Now I'm going to take the edge of the flatbread that's towards me and roll it up over the meat, making sure that it's as tight as I can get it without it shooting out the sides. You want to have about a ½ inch on either side. So we're just going to roll this up. And then to seal it, we're just going to press in on these edges here. So we're just going to seal those and then check on the other side, press down on this to seal that in, and set this over here on a baking sheet lined with parchment. You could spray some cooking spray on there, which I do have to grab the cooking spray. But let me show you one more before I do that. Take our flatbread, add in our generous tablespoon of the meat filling, paint the edges with the egg wash, and then roll up the edge towards me and keep rolling, and then press these edges down so that the egg white will help to seal it. Set that aside. Now let me get the cooking spray and finish up these lumpia, and I will be back. Okay, so there are my 12 lumpia, and I do have about a tablespoon of the meat mixture left. I apparently was not as generous filling the lumpia as I could have been. One thing you can do if you want to double check the seasoning is take about a teaspoon or so, put it in the microwave for about 10-15 seconds until it cooks through, and taste it. That way you can see if it's salty enough, if it's got enough pepper, what have you. But I'm gonna just throw that onto the board with the other lumpia and let it cook in the oven, which does tell you what we're gonna do next. I have my oven preheated to 400 degrees. I'm going to go through and just double check the seal on the edges and along the top here and make sure that they're all sealed up. And now we are going to take some cooking spray and spray the tops of each of these, just because flatbreads can dry out. So I want to give them a little insurance so they don't get too dry before they get brown. So these are going to go into the oven at 400 degrees for 5 minutes. Then I'm going to take them and flip each one and then spray them again with cooking spray and leave them for another 5 minutes. And I will be back and our appetizers will be ready. Okay, so there we have the lumpia fresh out of the oven. They were in there for a total of 10 minutes. I did flip them halfway through and let them cook on the other side after spraying them. And I did check my little leftover chicken here. You can see it's perfectly cooked, so they should be all the same way. So let me get these on a plate, bring everything else in, and we will go over those nutrition facts. Okay, there you have them, my scallion pancakes and scallion pancake dipping sauce, although you can use it for whatever you like, as I said, and my lumpia and my sweet and sour sauce. If you want it a little thicker, as I said, you could cook it a little bit longer, but this looks fine to me. It'll cling just enough, but not be syrupy. Now in these sauces, if you wanted, you could add some red pepper flakes or some sort of chili if you like it a little spicier, and that is listed as an option on the recipe. But since Paul is not a fan of spice, my partner Paul, I leave it out generally, and I can add my own at the table. Now for the scallion pancakes, if you were just to have this as one serving, which it's really not a big serving, this would be 2 better balanced bites or Old Blue Points. I'm on the Healthy Better Balanced plan, which is equivalent to the old WW Blue plan. And those are what I give the bites and points for. If you're on a different plan, you'd have to put it in the recipe builder and see what it comes up with for you. But that would be just 2 bites or blue points. If you're following calories, the whole serving would just be 90 calories. And if you're following macros, the fat would be 0.5 grams, the carbs would be 15.2 grams, the fiber would be 5.4 grams, and the protein would be 4.4 grams, and that's if you had this all to yourself. Now for the sauce, this would be 0 bites or 0 blue points for the entire thing. You could eat all of this and have 0 bites. And if you're following calories, the entire sauce here would just be 28 calories. And if you are following macros, the fat would be 0.1 grams, the carbs would be 9 grams, the fiber would be 0.2 grams, and the protein would be 2.1 grams, and that's for this entire sauce preparation. Now for the lumpia, I did make this as serving 6 people, so each person would get 2 lumpia. And those would be just 1 Better Balanced bite or old blue point. And if you're following calories, the calories would be 124. And if you're following macros, the fat would be 3.6 grams, the carbs would be 9.3 grams, the fiber would be 2.7 grams, and the protein would be 11.1 grams for 2 of these lumpia. Now I did forget to mention, if you wanted, you could make these ahead and just freeze them uncooked in an airtight container, and then I would transfer them to the fridge, or you could try cooking them, and I would add another 5 minutes to the cooking time. Now for the sauce here, it's serving 16 as I have it, which would be a generous tablespoon, and this sauce would be 0 bites or points up until 7 servings. So 7 tablespoons for 0 bites. Actually a little over, probably closer to 8 tablespoons for 0. But if you were going from 8 to 16 servings of this, just 1 bite. So this is a great alternative to that sweet and sour sauce you get from the Chinese restaurant. Definitely much better on bites, points, and calories, because for 1 serving of this, it's only 3 calories. And if you're following macros, the fat would be 0 grams, the carbs would be 3.5 grams, the fiber would be 0 grams, and the protein would be 0 grams. So the only thing you're getting out of this are some carbs from the sweetener and the ketchup. But there you have them, my light Asian appetizers. I hope you will give these a try. The recipes for each of these will be linked down in the description box, and each of their sauces will be in the same recipe. So if you just want the sauce for the lumpia, that will be in the lumpia recipe, and the scallion pancake sauce will be with the scallion pancake recipe. But those are linked down in the description box. Also down there, I did just do a review of the Acekool 5-in-1 hand blender, and they gave me a link and a code that if you go down to the Acekool link, click on that, it'll take you to Amazon. When you check out, use the code that I have underneath the link, and that will save you an extra 10% off of that. And you can go back, I'll card the review here and also link it down in the description box. I was very impressed with it. I had won this hand blender from Joan over at Joan's Pointed Plate, and she was right, it is great. Also down there you will find the links to my Amazon storefront as usual, my Instagram, my Facebook groups, and my recipe blog itself. So go check out all the information in the description box, and I'm sure you'll find something that you can use. Also, don't forget the usuals: like, subscribe, share, hit the notification bell, and comment down below what your thoughts on these easy and light appetizers are. So that does it for me. Until next time, bye.